told you that the FIA's master plan to stop another Mercedes-style dominance era could actually create something far worse? What if Max Verstappen and Toto Wolff's secret yacht meetings in Sardinia are connected to the biggest regulatory gamble in F1 history? And what if the 2026 rules could reward teams for building deliberately slower cars? Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will completely change how you see Formula One's future. Remember 2014, when Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg were beating entire grids by 49 seconds in Spain? According to the research, Mercedes didn't just win races during this era, they obliterated the competition. At the Spanish Grand Prix, Hamilton and Rosberg finished nearly a full minute ahead of third place. For 7 brutal seasons, Mercedes rode that engine advantage like a wave that never crashed. The source material reveals that Red Bull spent ungodly amounts of money through Honda just to close the gap by 2021. Ferrari? They had to resort to what the FIA politely called less than legal fuel flow things just to match Mercedes's power output. This wasn't racing. It was technological domination so complete that 9 teams were essentially fighting for scraps while Mercedes raced in their own championship. Now, with 2026 bringing what experts are calling the biggest technical revolution in 50 years, the FIA has revealed their master plan. Nicholas Tombazis, the FIA's single-seater director, confidently told, "I don't think that we're going to have a situation where a single manufacturer has such a huge advantage as was the case in 2014. The changes are massive. They're removing the MGU-H, that incredibly complex turbocharger shaft-mounted heat recovery system that gave Mercedes their crushing advantage. The new power units will feature far larger electrical components, revolutionary man-made fuel, and active aerodynamic systems." But here's where things get interesting and potentially terrifying. But wait until you hear about the 3-letter acronym that could turn this entire plan upside down. Meet ADO, Additional Development and Upgrade Opportunities. This is the FIA's secret weapon against dominance, and according to the source material, it could completely transform F1. Here's how this controversial system works. After the first 5 races of each season, the FIA will measure every power unit's performance. Any manufacturer producing 3% less power than the leader gets special privileges, more development budget, additional dyno time, and potentially the chance to homologate an entirely new engine mid-season. To put that 3% threshold in perspective, Alpine's engine was considered roughly 2 to 3% weaker than the grid when they were struggling for competitiveness. We're talking about razor-thin margins that could trigger massive regulatory interventions. Tombazis from the FIA explained, "We have newcomers, and it is always a risk at the start of a new cycle that there is some divergence initially. Additionally, we have a cost cap for the PU manufacturers now." This brings us to those mysterious yacht meetings between Max Verstappen and Toto Wolff in Sardinia. According to Autoprint, the Italian media outlet that broke the story, Wolff and Verstappen met on the Austrian's yacht, where the 4-time world champion was a guest. The source material reveals something crucial. Max has renewed his commitment to Red Bull for 2026, but it's hard to believe Wolff has given up on his plan to bring the Dutch driver to Mercedes. Just as it's easy to imagine Verstappen is keeping several options open for 2027. Verstappen's contract with Red Bull runs until 2028, but sources close to the situation believe his management team has secured an option to leave after the first year of the new regulations if Red Bull's competitiveness plunges. And the timing couldn't be more suspicious, because Red Bull might be facing their biggest crisis yet. The research reveals troubling signs for Red Bull's 2026 prospects. Reports from sources close to Red Bull's powertrain units suggest they might be behind competitors like Audi, being considered rookies in this area. Even more concerning, Red Bull fired their leader of 20 years just before entering the new regulation cycle. As the source material notes, Hare knew quite a lot about the project, and choosing to dive in this venture without him could only mean one of 2 things. You're either desperately trying to keep Verstappen on board, or you know that a rebuild is coming and you're preparing for it successfully. Former Haas principal Günther Steiner believes Verstappen's strategy is brilliant. Max's decision to stay with Red Bull? I think it's a strategic decision. Max knows he has the option to leave Red Bull at the end of 2026. That gives him maximum flexibility. Meanwhile, George Russell finds himself in an impossible position. Despite Wolff's public commitments, the source material reveals his uncertainty. Russell will be renewed soon. I always said I was happy with my team with Russell and Antonelli. But suddenly Max's future became uncertain, and so we talked to him too. The brutal honesty continues. I was always very clear with George. 90% would have stayed with us. But I also needed to talk with Verstappen. As the research points out, Russell knows he'll race in 2026. But that doesn't guarantee he'll have a Mercedes seat in 2027. Even if he wins a championship, he cannot be certain he'll be Wolff's #1 choice heading into 2027. But here's where the ADO system could create the biggest controversy in F1 history. The source material reveals a terrifying possibility. What if teams deliberately build slower engines to trigger ADO privileges? Imagine Ferrari creating a brilliant engine that's 4% better than everyone else. Suddenly, Mercedes, Honda, and Audi all get extra development budget, more dyno time, and potentially the ability to completely redesign their engines mid-season. Your engineering excellence gets artificially compressed not through better development, but through regulatory intervention. As Bezos admitted about the cost cap complications, when Honda were behind in 2016-2017, they had to spend a lot more money to catch up. With a cost cap, the risk is that you would never be able to do that. We now have a system where the fastest way to improve your engine could be to make it deliberately worse at the start of the season. Several teams are uniquely positioned for 2026. According to the research, Mercedes has many of the same engineers who created their 2014 dominance still at Brackley. Andy Cowell, who oversaw that revolutionary power unit project, is now running Aston Martin. Ferrari has been building toward this moment. Honda returned specifically because the MGU-H was removed. With 11 teams entering 2026 with completely new chassis, smaller cars, different tires, revolutionary engines, and active aerodynamics, the probability that one team gets it drastically wrong or right is enormous. The FIA believes they've created a system that will prevent another Mercedes-style era of dominance. But based on the evidence from both sources, they might have actually created something worse. A championship where the fastest car doesn't win, where engineering excellence is artificially limited, and where the most important battles happen in regulatory meetings rather than on track. 2026 is coming whether we're ready or not. Between Verstappen's strategic positioning, Mercedes' desperate pursuit, Red Bull's uncertainty, and the revolutionary ADO system, we're heading toward the most unpredictable season in F1 history. The question isn't whether 2026 will be different, it's whether it will be better or complete chaos. What do you think? Will the ADO system create better racing, or has the FIA opened Pandora's box? Let me know in the comments and make sure you're subscribed because this story is just getting started.